The Stay family were a picture of love, unity, and joy. This Brady Bunch-esque family, residing in Spring, Texas, was a close-knit group that embodied the essence of family values and togetherness. Cassidy, the eldest of 5 children, was born to parents Stephen and Katie. Stephen and Katie were high school sweethearts who had a love story that was nothing short of a fairy tale. They were deeply in love and committed to each other, and their bond was a testament to their enduring feelings for one another. Stephen was a real estate broker, a man known for his kindness, generosity, and dedication to his work. He was a loving father who always made time for his children despite his busy schedule. Katie, on the other hand, was a homemaker who devoted her life to raising their children. She was a beacon of warmth and love, always ready with a comforting word or a hug for her kids. However, on the night of June 9th, 2014, that's when everything changed. Welcome back to Dark Narratives. On this channel, we go over a lot of true crime and dark stories. If this piques your interest, please consider subscribing and giving this video a thumbs up, as this kind of content takes hours to create and helps bring attention to survivors of massacres that take place, as well as remembering the legacies of any lives lost. Today, we are going over the massacre of the Stay family. Without further delay, let us begin. Today's case takes us to the suburb of Spring, Texas. With a population of almost 63,000 and a jurisdiction that belongs to Houston, Texas, there are plenty of things to do in this small city if you're a nature and family-loving person. Spring offers plenty of attractions and activities for visitors to enjoy. Like many places in Texas, it has historical sites, and from water parks to petting zoos, there's no shortage of family-friendly entertainment options available in this town, making it an ideal destination for families with children looking for fun adventures. Last but not least, it's a short drive away from Houston's seaside areas where tourists can consider going to beaches or trying their hand at fishing in the Gulf of Mexico. It is here that we find the Stay family. The parents Stephen and Katie Stay had a grand total of 5 children. Cassidy, aged 15, Brian, aged 13, Emily, aged 9, Rebecca, 7, and Zachary, at the tiny young age of 4. Both Stephen and Katie were actively involved in their church community where they volunteered together as Sunday school teachers. Their eldest son, Brian, had recently graduated from middle school while the rest of the siblings were still attending elementary or middle schools respectively. Cassidy, the oldest daughter, was well known for her intelligence and compassion towards others, which she demonstrated through various activities like volunteering at local food banks or participating in extracurricular activities aimed towards helping those less fortunate than herself. All of these children were bright students, known for getting straight A's on their report cards. Mom Katie also had a wonderful sister named Melanie, and Melanie married a very, very sinister man. We're going to need to rewind to tell this full story. Katie was born as Katie Leon and had a sister by the name of Melanie. Upon reaching her adulthood, Melanie moved to California where she met Ronald Lee Haskell Jr, a California native that spent a significant portion of his life in Eagle River, a small but growing community that belongs to Anchorage, Alaska. Ronald was a bit of a strange character in high school, being voted in as both the class clown and the prom king and homecoming king of his high school class. He didn't choose to pursue tertiary education and essentially became a delivery driver contracted to work for the likes of FedEx and other delivery services from time to time. Fast forward a little bit to 2001 and we have Melanie meeting Ronald, and a romance had flared up between the two of them. They tied the knot on March 15th of 2002, and over the next few years they had moved to the city of Logan, Utah and gave birth to 4 children. One would think that things were nothing of short of fantastic for this married couple because, of course, they had been together for so long and had so many children, but behind the scenes of this outwardly happy marriage, the situation for this couple could not be more dark. From time to time, Melanie was subject to domestic abuse from Ronald. It's not clear if there was mutual toxicity between herself and her husband, but one thing that is clear is that she was certainly a victim of physical abuse from Ronald. 6 years after their marriage, on one morning in June 2008, it was reported that Ronald had pulled Melanie out of bed by her hair and hit her on the side of her head. This resulted in 1 charge of domestic violence, simple assault, and committing an act of violence in front of children. He reached a plea bargain on this day and was charged with simple assault by pleading guilty, thus avoiding any form of prison sentencing. Now, one would think that a single run-in with the law might be enough to make a human being come to grips with how to behave and treat one's own spouse. Unfortunately, Ronald didn't learn. At the time, it was unclear whether or not Melanie was employed and brought in enough money to care for all 4 of her children without Ronald, but after enduring this treatment for 8 more years, Melanie had enough and decided it was time to leave Ronald. On July 8, 2013, Melanie filed for a restraining order against her husband, and in August of that year, officially filed for divorce from Ronald, resulting in Melanie becoming the primary care provider for the children they had together. At this point, Melanie took the children to Texas to be closer with her own immediate family. Obviously shaken up mentally, Ronald moved into living with his mother and sister in San Marcos, California, and things only went downhill from there. For approximately 1 year, his mother and sister had to tolerate his deteriorating mental health and state of mind, and the domestic abuse that he had dished out on his ex-wife Melanie soon became the same treatment that he had given to his mother and sister. On the morning of July 2nd, 2014, Ronald Haskell's mother dialed 911 to bring police to her residence. She had gotten into a very heated argument with Ronald, and then in a fit of rage, the tall, fat, and abusive neckbeard ogre forced his mother into the garage, beat her savagely, and tied her to a chair with duct tape, and also bound her hands. She was later discovered by Ronald's sister and then freed long after Ronald had left the residence, at which point she had given a statement to police. It's unclear whether or not a warrant was issued for his arrest when his mother was freed, but it is known that Ronald's mother clearly stated that she wanted a restraining order against her own son. They began a manhunt for Haskell, but by the time they found out where he was, there was nothing they could do. Ronald increasingly became mentally unstable since his divorce and wanted to see his children. He began a long drive to Spring, Texas to find the last known remaining family members of his ex-wife to get this information, and that brings us to the early evening of July 9th, 2014. Cassidy Stay was home alone during that hot summer day, and then her uncle by marriage, Ronald, showed up at the front door and asked if any of the family was home while he was wearing his FedEx delivery clothes, as well as a small disguise. Only Cassidy was home at the time, and without thinking, she told him to come back to the house later when the rest of the family would be at home. At 3 p.m., he knocked on the door of the Stay residence once again, and when the door was opened, yet again by Cassidy, he forced his way in, tied her up, and presented 2 pistols that he had brought, and then proceeded to tie up the family one by one. He directed his anger at Katie and her husband for 2 hours, prodding them to give him the residential address of his ex-wife and children. The family refused, and then one by one, he shot each of them execution style in the head. He left the scene speeding away in his own private vehicle, but it wasn't long until police started tailing him. Cassidy was shot in the head, but the way she was shot, she put her hand up to block any gunshots towards her. One bullet that was fired at her head hit her hand in such a way that it deflected just enough to graze her scalp and avoid her brain. She played dead after she was shot, and after Ronald left, she called 911. After giving chase, Ronald was cornered in a cul-de-sac after police hit his car with a spike strip. Residents of this area evacuated their homes for nearly 4 hours, where he led a standoff, holding himself hostage. Eventually, his car was sandwiched by 2 armored police vehicles. He held one of his firearms to his own head, threatening to take his own life, but eventually he surrendered to police. The next morning, he was officially charged with 6 counts of capital murder. On July 11th, he was ordered to be held without bond, and later court appearances established that the prosecution were seeking the death penalty against Ronald. During Ronald Haskell Jr.'s trial, his defense attorney Doug Durham argued that he should not be held fully responsible for the murders due to his mental state at the time of the shooting. Durham claimed that Haskell suffered from severe depression and delusional thinking, which caused him to believe that he was on a mission from God to kill members of Cassidy Stay's family in order to protect his own children, whom he believed were being kept away from him by his ex-wife. The defense presented evidence, including medical records, testimony from psychiatrists, and interviews with family members suggesting that Haskell had been exhibiting signs of paranoia and irrational behavior leading up to the day of the murders. Durham also argued that Ron's actions were not premeditated, but rather impulsive acts committed while under extreme emotional distress. He further stated during closing arguments, "This is a man with severe mental illness who did something unimaginable." However, prosecutors countered these claims, arguing instead that Ronald Lee Haskell Jr. carefully planned out this attack as evidenced by various factors like wearing different disguises or using fake names before entering Cassidy Stay's house on July 9th, 2014. I don't want to go into extreme detail in this video with regards to the prosecuting lawyers presenting their closing arguments, as they go into extremely graphic detail with Ronald's actions that evening, but you will find a link to a video with the closing arguments in the pinned comment below this video. On October 11th, 2017, Ronald Lee Haskell Jr. was sentenced to death by lethal injection. He remains on death row to this day with no scheduled execution date. In her victim's impact statement, his ex-wife Melanie said that she felt she had paid her ultimate price to get away from her abusive and deranged ex-husband. In her own victim statement, in emotional testimony, Cassidy said that only God could help Ronald now, and that she respected the decision of the jury. Cassidy, the lone survivor of this tragedy, has become an icon for healing, support, and survival. A GoFundMe to support Cassidy raised $406,000 in donations to support her university studies. We should all hope and pray that today, 9 years later, she is able to move on with her life, fully heal from all of this, and live a happy, productive, and helpful life to everyone that surrounds her. In closing, I want to mention that it is sad, if not appalling, that there were at least 2 prior incidents where Ronald could have been arrested and perhaps changed his ways. Although he clearly had 2 prior incidents that involved law enforcement and the legal system, he didn't spend a day in prison before he devastated the community of Spring, Texas, and took the lives of 6 completely innocent relatives of his ex-wife. That concludes today's video. If you all think this was a case worth listening to, please hit the thumbs up button. If you think you'll be back, make sure to subscribe, and as always, please remember that every day is a new opportunity to see the light. Until next time, I bid you all farewell.